Welcome to Rural Pick Radio, where we give you a rural image of life, and we are everyday people. I'd like to welcome you all to the show. Today, we're going to tackle a very heavy subject, and that's dealing with affirmative action in the colleges. Of course, you all know that white students and Asian students have sued that they were discriminated against due to the administering process of minority students, particularly black and brown, due to what is called affirmative action. Now, I want to show you all something that I found coming from the year 2007. It was a interview did with ABC News. Matter of fact, it was September 30th, 2007, done by Ariane DeVoe. Actually, yeah. And it was, the title of the article was called Silent Justice, Outspoken on Affirmative Action. Clarence-Thomas says his Yale law degree bore the taint of racial preference. Now, let me set this up for you. In America, there's a thing called supremacy. There's a thing called racism. Systemic racism. There's a thing called driving while black. There's a thing called police brutality amongst black and brown. I can go on, list goes on and on and on. Because one thing you can't hide is who you are in them. You can't, even if you bleach your skin, you still could look at Michael Jackson and tell he was black. And he still faced discrimination. Now, what Clarence-Thomas understands, but seems like he don't understand, is that you're going to be discriminated against wherever you go. You're only black in the room, you get discriminated against. You go to certain places, you'll get the look, you'll get the jeers. That's what happens in America. So it's not affirmative action that should have made you feel a certain way by you prospering from affirmative action. You should be tackling justice and equality. So you can be looked upon as an equal, but you can't force a race of people to see you as their equal, no matter how, you could be the smartest guy in the room, right? But it's still not going to allow them, due to hate and envy, to see you as an equal, because by them seeing you as inferior, it bolsters their credibility. You see how that works? Now check this out. This September 30th, 2007. I'm going to read this to you guys. Although Clarence-Thomas has written his views on preferential policies in his Supreme Court opinions, the release of his book and his interview with ABC News provide an opportunity for the justice to explain more thoroughly than ever before why he thinks racial preferences are wrong and detrimental. He said racial preferences are wrong and detrimental in a racist society. Wow. His views have long vexed civil rights groups, but they also differ from the traditional conservative outlook and might reshape the nation's debate over affirmative action. While conservatives often talk about leveling the playing field for society as a whole, Thomas' focus on the stigmatizing effect affirmative action has on those it is meant to help. Clarence-Thomas' personal experience living through segregated elementary schools and then transitioning to mostly white schools gives him a starkly different perspective from that of white conservatives opposed to affirmative action. When you talk about affirmative action programs, you talk about the benefits and the costs. says Roger Clegg of the Center for Equal Opportunity, a group critical of racial preferences. Thomas can talk about cost with a credibility you can't have if you are not a supposed beneficiary of affirmative action. When Thomas applied to Yale Law School, his race was taken into consideration. He wrote in his book, "I asked Yale to take that fact into account when I applied, not thinking that there might be anything wrong with doing so," which it wasn't. That's why you did it in the first place. There wasn't nothing wrong with doing that because you understood you were living in a racist society, so you need all the leverages you can in order to pursue your goals. But Thomas says that after he graduated from Yale, he went on several job interviews with one high-priced lawyer after another, and the attorneys treated him dismissively. Many asked pointed questions, suggesting that they doubt I was as smart as my grades indicated. It wasn't that, Clarence. Had nothing to do with your grades. It had something to do with the color of your skin. And you know that this has been going on from black pilots in war, in theaters of war, to where they would make them retake the test if they scored high because they couldn't believe, wait, a black man, you can't score higher than a white man. Something wrong with the test. You cheated. Take it over again. We're going to have somebody watching you. You went through the same thing. That's how you went through racism, and maybe you didn't understand, or maybe you suffer from some type of denial, right? To where, or maybe you look in the mirror and you don't see what the rest of the world sees. I don't know what it is, but for you to miss the elephant in the room, which is racism, and you say, well, you felt that your accomplishments were stained because you got them through affirmative action, you wouldn't have never got a chance to even get at the table if it wasn't for affirmative action. Let's continue. The fact that he couldn't get a job would shape his thoughts on affirmative action programs for years to come. Thomas wrote, "Now I knew what a law degree from Yale was worth when it bore the taint of racial preferences. I was humiliated and desperate." Wait a minute. Why do you think all of the black men that went before you, who was belittled, who said that they didn't have the mind or smarts to achieve a said job, do you think that it broke them down? Do you think that they wasn't disappointed? Do you think even in sports, when they said that the black man couldn't be quarterback because the plays he had to learn was too complicated for him to learn, you don't think that stung? You don't think that in order to compete in a racist society that the federal government had to step in and say, hey man, you gotta allow so many in to sit back and see what they can do? Because some of these ideas that black men have had over the years and what they've created has helped us tremendously as far as advancing America. In his interview with ABC News, Thomas said he was unable, even when he was nominated to the Supreme Court, to erase the stigmatizing effects of racial preference. Once it is assumed that everything you do achieve is because of your race, there is no way out, he said. It is irrefutable, and it is proved to be true. And everything now that someone like me does, there's a backwash into your whole life is because of race. Irrebuttable. Now, check this out. Your whole life is race. You can drive through a racist town, Clarence-Thomas. Put your baseball cap on, put some shades on, dress down a little bit, and you'll face discrimination. Right. Now, if you get jammed up in the court system, right, the fact that you are a Supreme Court justice will give you some leeway because of affirmative action, which allowed you to be chosen to get into Yale to become the person that you are. Those who didn't benefit from affirmative action or didn't get called on may not have the luck or may not benefit from the position that you're in. Meaning, affirmative action serves a purpose and you are a living witness of affirmative action. Peter H. Shook, a professor at Yale Law School and a prominent critic of affirmative action, says that the stigma associated with preferences has long been an argument of those opposed to the program. But he hopes that Clarence-Thomas' real-life experience will help to broaden the debate, says Shook. The fact that he is who he is gives the argument a special force. Yeah, well, of course, you're Supreme Court Justice. You've witnessed and more than likely sat on the bench dealing with racial issues. Not one time, but countless times, race has came up in America. Now you know this. But yet, you'll say, well, I feel bad because I'm a Supreme Court Justice, but I rode the wave of affirmative action to get here when I should have just been able to be in my position without the affirmative action. Right? But with Clarence-Thomas, what you fail to realize, you cannot change the hearts and the minds of the powerful who sit at the head of the seat. That's the problem. You can say they should be able to be in a position due to their own merit. And yeah, that's what Separate but Equal was about. Right? Look, y'all do what y'all want over there. We do what we want over here. Just don't bother us with the discrimination and the racism and the injustice. And we'll be okay. We understand that part. But the fact still remains. You can't expect a person that's racist at heart, which you can't look at a person and tell who's racist. Right? And when they deny you without no good reason at all, then what's your next outcome? What do? So you needed affirmative action just to get you in the door, to show that you were smart in order to beat back the myth that a black man couldn't rise to certain levels of not education, but of intellect in order to even sit on the Supreme Court. Because without that affirmative action, they slam the door in your face. That's the hard truth. That's the hard reality that has to be faced. You cannot, look, you see Trump, his followers, a lot of them are racist to the core. Some of them hold positions of power. You think if you wasn't Clarence-Thomas and you were on your way to becoming getting into Yale, becoming a Supreme Court justice, sitting on the bench, you think they wouldn't try to find a reason to block you? If that affirmative action wasn't on the table, let's reverse it. Let's fast forward and say you were just getting started today. Do you know the obstacles and uphills you would have to climb just because of the color of your skin? All right? Or you might don't know. Maybe in your mind, you're looking at it like, like there is no racism, right? Nobody sees me as an African American male. I don't face discrimination in America. So therefore, I don't need affirmative action. And you know darn well, even after you became a Supreme Court judge, even though at the time you were at the law firm, you faced discrimination. And the reason, man, is that we're doing this is because it's so many brilliant minds that's coming after Clarence Thomas who still needs affirmative action to get to where they're trying to go. Yeah, it's sad that you would still need affirmative action in 2022, but look at the hate crimes, look at the racism, look at the black church burnings and black church shootings. Look at the racism that displays itself every day in America, from the justice system all the way to corporate. And you mean to tell me you don't need affirmative action? I beg to differ, but hey, let's continue. But opponents of Thomas' position argue there is no real stigma. Levi Pearson, the communication director for the National Black Law Student Association, contends there are no special conditions once you get into law school. You are competing at the same level. Pearson says, affirmative action creates doors to be open. At some point, you have to have special access to be able to get in the door. See, that's all. Affirmative action, without affirmative action, you wouldn't get in the door. Clarence, people trying to tell you these minorities, black and brown, need to get in order to provide for their families. You shut that door down where they have. You think staunch racists that's in position, who hold these racist views, who don't publicly display them, but they keep them inside, think they're going to let them in? All they have to stamp is deny, deny, deny. But you know this. I know if we knew it, I know you knew it. That's the point I'm trying to make. If we knew it, I know you knew it. Now, besides the stigmatizing aspect that Thomas sees in affirmative action programs, he also worries about young children being thrust into programs and situations for which they are unprepared, says Thomas. So will expend huge amounts of energy over affirmative action, but very little over what's really happening in the classroom for the bulk of these kids. Thomas maintains children don't need all those theories and says they need people to actually help them. Wait a minute. Let me go back. That didn't make sense. He says, besides the stigmatizing aspect that Thomas sees in affirmative action program, he also writes about young children being thrust into programs and situations for which they are unprepared. Wait. If you have the qualifications, and what affirmative action does is allow you to put your qualifications on display. Now, how can you be unprepared when you go into a classroom with paid professors. That's their job, is to prepare you. You show all you got to do is show the interest and the want to and the willingness to learn. And then your professors, they do the rest. You don't go in there knowing what the professors know, especially on the first day. See, and I'll tell y'all in a minute what the problem be. I'll tell you in a minute, problem. In the past, Thomas has gone after those who say that programs that are predominantly black might somehow be inferior. And that's the problem. See, now, that's why, this is the key. See, that's why you need all black scholars, all black theologians, right? And you have to take their mind in consideration. How can Benjamin Banneker produce the first almanac? How can blacks create stoplights, pyramids, and all the wonderful inventions that was done by black people, and you create the illusion that if it's an all-black program, it would be inferior? How? You saying if Frederick Douglass was behind it, it would be inferior? You saying Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, it would be inferior? What are you saying? There's no light. There's no light in the black community. Everything is dim. It don't make sense at all. I don't understand. Inferior? Look, in a recent Supreme Court opinion, striking down voluntary public school district plans to assign children to schools based on race, Thomas writes that scholars have differing opinions as to whether educational benefits arise from racial balancing. As evidence, he cited a study done by George Mason University professor David J. Armour, who opposed the school district plans for race-based placement, and the Supreme Court argued says actually achievement data, when corrected for the rate of poverty at the individual level, show that black students in majority black schools perform about the same as in integrated schools. In a 1995 case regarding judicial desegregation remedies, Thomas wrote, "It never ceased to amaze me that the courts are so willing to assume that anything that is predominantly black must be inferior." After detailing his painful struggles in life, Thomas wrote he doesn't want other children to have to suffer like he did. Right, that's why you give them a leg. That's why you give them a leg up. That's why you need a firm back so they don't have to go through what you went through. Wait. He don't want other children to suffer like he did. You don't know what you're putting on these kids, he wrote. You don't know how it is to have no money and no shoes or old boots and things like that. You don't know how it is not to be able to afford to go home when other kids are on spring break. Wow. It's not about that. It ain't about that. What happens is your parents muster up enough money as they can to get the education, to get the material things, and provide a life for their families. It's called sacrifice. It's not about feelings. It's not about emotions. Your emotions has nothing to do with your learning. Your emotion has nothing to do with the amount of money you can make or how good a job you can do. You go do the job, and if you got some emotional issues, you go seek you some help and do that on your own time. But when a child has that desire and they shooting for their goal and all they see is that goal in front of them, nothing can stop them. Not no shoes and not coming home from spring break. And no. See, but the problem is. It's the problem. See, he's saying, look, it's like that first black in the room, right? When that first black in the room is like, I'm comfortable because I'm the only black and I don't want other blacks to be up here with me because I want to be the special Negro. Right? No, it's not about that. Let them in, Clarence. Let the people in to prove themselves. As a matter of fact, that's all they asking for is an opportunity. And that's what affirmative action does. It provides an opportunity. That's all anybody asks for. That's all you wanted, Clarence-Thomas, when you were starting off. That's why you took the affirmative action, because you just wanted the opportunity to show what you can do. And after you show what you can do and people marvel over your intellect, now you're saying, yeah, it sure would have been better getting here without this affirmative action. So I'm going to knock it down for all the other black people so they have to go through what I went through. Hell, they need to go through what you went through, because that's how they're going to be where you're at. Don't speak for those who haven't made it there yet. You can't get a drink from the well and then plug it up. You got your taste, and that's it for everybody that's behind you. They just got to make their own way. I'm in now. And that's what it sounds like. We'll see. But this discussion has to be talked about. It's a lot of topics and a lot of discussion that has to be had in America if we are going to evolve. It's a must. It has to take place, and affirmative action is one of them. Right here on Verbal Pick Radio, we're out.